Ethan Blackwood had built his life on winning. In the courtroom, in boardrooms, in negotiations where silence was louder than words, he always emerged on top. At 38, he was already one of the most feared corporate lawyers in the city. His suits were tailored to perfection, his shoes polished daily, and his name alone was enough to make opponents reconsider their chances. To Ethan, success wasn't just earned, it was deserved. He worked on the 32nd floor of a glass tower that overlooked the city like a throne. From his office, people below looked like ants, rushing through lives that seemed insignificant to him. He didn't think of himself as cruel, just efficient. Emotions were weaknesses. Courtesy was optional. Respect was reserved for those who proved they were worth it. Every evening, long after most employees had gone home, the cleaning staff arrived. They were invisible to Ethan. He didn't know their names, didn't acknowledge their presence, and never once considered that their lives might be as complex as his own. Except for one woman. She appeared one Monday evening, quietly pushing a cart of cleaning supplies across the marble floor. She was probably in her early 30s, wearing a plain uniform, her dark hair pulled back neatly. She moved with calm precision, humming softly as she worked. Ethan barely noticed her, until she accidentally bumped into his desk. "Watch it," he snapped without looking up from his laptop. "I'm sorry, sir," she said calmly. Her voice was steady, not fearful, not apologetic enough. Ethan glanced up, irritation flaring. "Be more careful. This desk costs more than you make in a year." The woman met his gaze. For a split second, something passed through her eyes. Not anger, not fear, but something sharper. Amusement. "Yes, sir," she replied politely and returned to her work. Ethan scoffed and went back to typing, dismissing the interaction as meaningless. But later that night, as he gathered his things to leave, he noticed something odd. His office, usually spotless, was immaculate in a way it had never been before. Files perfectly aligned. Desk cleared exactly how he liked it, without him ever explaining. He frowned. The next evening, she was there again. This time, Ethan watched her. She moved differently than the others, methodical, focused, intelligent. When she cleaned, she seemed to observe everything. The framed awards on his wall, the confidential case files left open, the contracts stacked neatly on his desk. "You shouldn't touch those," Ethan said sharply, pointing at a file. "I wasn't," she replied. "But you should lock them. Someone less honest might read them." The audacity stunned him. "Do you know who I am?" he asked coldly. She looked at him calmly. "A lawyer. I'm a senior partner here." She nodded. "Then you should know better." Ethan laughed incredulously. "You're here to clean, not give advice. And you're here to work," she said. "Yet you're watching me." That shut him up. For the first time in years, someone hadn't bowed to his authority. Her name, he later learned from a supervisor, was Lena Morales. Over the following weeks, Ethan found himself noticing her more than he wanted to admit. Lena worked quietly, never complained, never lingered. But when she spoke, her words carried weight. She read during breaks, not magazines. Books. Thick ones. One night, Ethan glanced at the title, Contract Law, Principles and Practice. He raised an eyebrow. "You studying to be a lawyer now?" Lena didn't look embarrassed. "I already studied." He laughed. "Right, and I'm the janitor." She looked up slowly. "You shouldn't assume." Ethan smirked. "I assume based on evidence." "Then you're not as good a lawyer as you think," she said calmly. That night, something unsettled him. Days later, Ethan was assigned a high-profile case, one he couldn't afford to lose. A multinational corporation was being sued for unlawful termination and discrimination. The evidence was complex, and the opposing counsel was ruthless. Late one night, exhausted and irritated, Ethan slammed his laptop shut. "This case is garbage," he muttered. Lena, cleaning nearby, paused. "Actually, it's not." Ethan stared at her. "Excuse me? The plaintiff has a strong argument," she continued casually. especially if they focus on the internal emails from March. The language used shows intent. Silence fell heavy. How do you know about the emails? Ethan asked slowly. She shrugged. You left them open, and the phrasing is legally dangerous. Ethan stood. You had no right to read them? She finished. You're right, but if I notice, the opposing counsel definitely will. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel superior. He felt challenged. You think you know better than me? He demanded. Lena met his gaze without flinching. I think law doesn't care about job titles. Ethan dismissed her angrily, but her words lingered. The next day, in court, the opposing lawyer attacked exactly the point Lena had mentioned. Ethan barely managed to recover. That night, he stayed late. So did Lena. You were right, he admitted stiffly. She smiled faintly. Truth tends to be... Where did you study? He asked reluctantly. Lena wiped her hands on a cloth. Harvard. Full scholarship. Ethan froze. What? I graduated top of my class, she added. Then life happened. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, Ethan Blackwood realized something terrifying. The woman he had dismissed, belittled, and ignored, the cleaning lady, was not beneath him. She might be far above him in ways that truly mattered. And he had no idea that this realization was only the beginning. Ethan Blackwood did not sleep well that night. For the first time in years, his mind refused to shut down, replaying a single sentence over and over. Harvard, full scholarship. The words echoed like a verdict. He had spent his entire career believing intelligence and success were measured by position and paycheck. Yet the woman who cleaned his office floors after midnight had dismantled that belief with one calm confession. The next evening, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than usual and stayed later than planned. He told himself it was for work, but deep down, he knew he was waiting. When Lena finally appeared, pushing her cart down the corridor, he felt a strange tightness in his chest. You really went to Harvard? He asked abruptly. She stopped, glanced at him, then nodded. Yes, and you're here? He gestured vaguely around the office. Yes, she replied again, unfazed. Ethan folded his arms. Why? Lena resumed, wiping the glass wall of his office. Because life isn't linear, because intelligence doesn't protect you from loss, and because sometimes survival matters more than status. Her words struck harder than any courtroom argument. What happened? He asked, surprising even himself. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. My father got sick during my final year. Medical bills piled up. After he passed, my mother needed support. I took a job, then another. Law firms don't wait for you to grieve. Ethan swallowed. He had never lost anyone close to him. His success had been uninterrupted, clean, predictable. I applied everywhere, Lena continued. But once you step off the path, people stop seeing you as capable. They see gaps, weakness. Ethan looked away. That night, he reviewed the case again, this time with Lena's insight in mind. He rewrote arguments, strengthened weak points, and for the first time considered a perspective that wasn't his own. In court the following day, the difference was undeniable. The judge leaned forward. The opposing counsel hesitated. Ethan didn't just defend, he dismantled. He won. Back at the office, his partners congratulated him, clapping him on the back, praising his brilliance. Ethan accepted it all, but his thoughts were elsewhere. That evening, he waited. You helped me win, he said when Lena arrived. She smiled faintly. You would have figured it out eventually. No, he said firmly. I wouldn't have, and I don't like taking credit that isn't mine. She studied him. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, he replied, but I want to repay you. Lena laughed softly. I don't need money. I didn't say money, Ethan said. I want to help you get back into law. Her hands stilled. I didn't ask for that, she said carefully. I know, but you deserve it. She met his gaze, and for the first time there was something like vulnerability in her eyes. "You don't understand. I've tried. Doors don't reopen easily. Let me try," he insisted.
Days passed. Then weeks. Ethan began making calls, quiet ones, strategic ones.
He didn't announce it, didn't boast. He simply worked. But not everyone approved. One afternoon, Ethan's senior partner, Richard Hale, called him into his office. "I hear you're advocating for a janitor," Richard said coolly. Ethan stiffened. "Her name is Lena Morales, and she's a better lawyer than half the associates here." Richard scoffed. "Appearances matter, Ethan. This firm has a reputation." "So did we," Ethan replied sharply, "until we started judging talent by resumes instead of ability." Richard's eyes hardened. "Careful, you're crossing lines." Ethan left the office with clenched fists. That night, he told Lena everything. "They don't want you here," he admitted. "They don't want someone who challenges their narrative." She nodded SL. "Owly, I expected that. Does that mean you'll give up?" he asked. "No," she said quietly. "Means I'll choose my battles carefully." Something shifted between them. Their conversations grew longer, deeper, less guarded. They debated cases, ethics, and justice late into the night. Ethan found himself listening more than speaking, an unfamiliar role that felt strangely right. One evening, Lena handed him a folder. "What's this?" he asked. "A case," she said. "One I couldn't take. A woman fired illegally, threatened into silence." Ethan read the details. His jaw tightened. "Why didn't you bring this to a firm?" "They wouldn't listen," Lena replied. "But you might." Ethan took the case and lost, not in court, but in retaliation. The corporation pushed back hard. Threats, pressure, calls from higher up. Richard confronted him again. "Drop it." "No," Ethan said. "Then you'll sink with her." Ethan walked out. That night he found Lena in his office, quietly mopping the floor. "They're pushing me out," he said. She stopped. "Because of me, because of justice," he corrected. Lena exhaled slowly. "I never wanted to cost you everything." Ethan stepped closer. "You didn't. You showed me what I was missing." Silence stretched between them, charged, heavy, undeniable. "You once asked why I'm still here," Lena said softly. "Maybe I was waiting for someone to see me." Ethan met her eyes. "I see you," and for the first time, the arrogant lawyer wasn't standing above the cleaning lady. He was standing beside her. The moment Ethan walked out of Richard Hale's office, he knew his career would never be the same. The polished corridors that once felt like a kingdom now felt narrow, suffocating. For years, he had ruled these halls with confidence and entitlement. Now, every step echoed with uncertainty. That evening, the firm felt colder than usual. Conversations hushed when Ethan passed. Doors closed quietly. He had become a liability, not because he lacked skill, but because he had chosen to stand beside someone the firm deemed invisible. Lena noticed the change immediately. "They're freezing you out," she said as she wiped down the conference table. Ethan leaned against the doorway. "They think silence will pressure me, and will it?" "No," he replied without hesitation. "But it will cost me." Lena set the cloth down. "Then stop." He looked at her sharply. "What?" "Stop defending me," she said calmly. "You've done enough. This system isn't built to be challenged from inside." Ethan shook his head. "I won't abandon this case, or you." She met his gaze. "I'm not asking you to abandon justice. I'm asking you to trust me." That night, Lena did something Ethan never expected. She opened her laptop. For years, she had kept her legal mind sharp, working pro bono cases online, writing briefs for nonprofits under pseudonyms, helping victims navigate legal paperwork quietly. While Ethan had climbed the corporate ladder, Lena had built something else entirely: precision, resilience, and a quiet reputation in the shadows. "This is my work," she said, turning the screen toward him. Ethan's breath caught. Case summaries, legal strategies, settlements won, lives changed, all of this, he whispered. "I never stopped being a lawyer," Lena replied. "I just stopped asking permission. Over the next weeks, their roles subtly reversed." Lena began leading strategy discussions. Ethan listened, learned, adapted. He realized how much of his confidence had once come from authority rather than understanding. Lena's approach was sharper, more humane, and devastatingly effective. When the illegal termination case returned to court, Ethan followed her lead. The result was explosive. The judge ruled in favor of the plaintiff. The corporation was fined heavily. News outlets pick it up the story. And then the whispers began. Who's Lena Morales? Where did this strategy come from? Why does Ethan Blackwood look like he's following someone else's script? Richard Hale was furious. "You humiliated this firm," he snapped in a private meeting. "You let a cleaning lady dictate legal strategy." Ethan stood tall. "You humiliated yourselves by underestimating her." Richard sneered. "She'll disappear. And so will you." Ethan didn't flinch. "Then we'll disappear with integrity." 2 days later, Ethan was officially removed as lead counsel on all major cases. That should have broken him. Instead, it freed him. That night, as Lena cleaned the now nearly empty floor, Ethan handed her a resignation letter. "I'm done," he said simply. Lena stared at the paper. "You're serious. I should have walked away years ago," he admitted. "I just didn't realize it. What will you do?" Ethan smiled faintly. Something terrifying. Within a month, the city buzzed with rumors. A new legal firm had opened, small, independent, fearless. Its mission was simple, justice without hierarchy. Lena didn't clean anymore. She stood at the center. At the opening meeting, Ethan addressed the small team they had assembled. Young lawyers, overlooked talent, people who had been dismissed or ignored. "This firm isn't about prestige," he said, "it's about truth." Then he turned to Lena. "Our lead legal strategist," he announced. Applause filled the room. Lena felt her throat tighten. Later that night, she stood alone in the office staring at the city skyline through a familiar glass wall. This time, from the inside, Ethan joined her quietly. "You built this," he said. "No," she corrected. "We did." Silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. "You know," Ethan said softly, "I used to think power was about control. And now?" she asked. "Now I know it's about courage." She earned to him. "You lost everything." He shook his head. "I finally gained perspective." Their relationship shifted, not into romance yet, but into something deeper. Respect, partnership, trust. One afternoon, a former colleague of Ethan's walked into their office. He looked around, confused. "I didn't expect this." Lena smiled. "Most people don't." The man scoffed. "So the cleaning lady runs the show now?" Ethan stepped forward, but Lena raised a hand. "Yes," she said calmly. "And if you're here to underestimate me, you can leave." The man left. Ethan laughed softly afterward. "You didn't even blink." "I've been underestimated my entire life," Lena replied. "It's exhausting, but it's also useful. People reveal themselves when they think you don't matter." That night, Ethan realized something profound. He wasn't her savior. He was her student. And Lena Morales, the woman once ignored, dismissed, and belittled, was no longer cleaning floors. She was cleaning out corruption. And the world was just beginning to notice. Success came faster than either of them expected. Within months, Morales and Blackwood became the firm people whispered about. The place where impossible cases went when no one else would take them. Whistleblowers, wrongfully terminated employees, victims of corporate intimidation, all found refuge within their modest office. The firm didn't boast marble floors or towering glass walls, but it carried something far more dangerous to the powerful: integrity. And power never stays silent when threatened. The first warning came quietly. A client withdrew suddenly, apologizing profusely and refusing to explain. Then another. Anonymous calls followed, late at night, breathing on the other end of the line. Emails arrived with vague threats disguised as friendly advice. Ethan recognized the pattern immediately. "They're testing us," he said grimly. Lena didn't look surprised. Said, "They always do." The real blow came when Lena received a letter from the Bar Association. Notice of review. Her past was under scrutiny. Her employment gaps, her lack of recent formal practice, even her years as a cleaning lady were framed as misrepresentation. "They're questioning your right to practice," Ethan said, reading the letter twice. "They were questioning my worth," Lena replied calmly. Ethan slammed the letter onto the desk. "This is retaliation." "Yes," Lena said. "And it's exactly what I expected." For the first time since they'd started the firm, Ethan felt fear, not for himself, but for her. "If they succeed, I lose my license," she finished. Again, the hearing was scheduled within weeks. The media caught wind of it quickly. Headlines weren't kind, from mop to motions, is the cleaning lady lawyer a fraud? Ethan wanted to fight back publicly to defend her reputation, but Lena stopped him. "Let them talk," she said. "Truth doesn't need shouting." Still, the strain showed. Lena worked longer hours, triple-checking every case, every citation, every word. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about proving that the system couldn't erase someone simply because they didn't fit the mold. The night before the hearing, Ethan found her alone in the office, sitting in the dark. "You okay?" he asked gently. Lena didn't look up. "Do you know what hurts the most?" "What?" "They don't care that I'm competent. They care that I dared to rise after being invisible." Ethan sat beside her. "No matter what happens tomorrow, you've already changed things." She smiled faintly. "That's not how institutions work." The hearing room was cold and formal, filled with polished suits and familiar faces from Ethan's former firm. Richard Hales sat among them, watching quietly. Lena stood alone at the center. She didn't wear anything extravagant, just a simple suit, her posture straight, her expression calm. When questioned, she didn't defend emotionally. She defended factually. She presented her credentials, her academic achievements, her pro bono work, her successful cases. When asked why she worked as a cleaning lady, she answered simply, "Because intelligence doesn't pay medical bills. Survival does." A murmur rippled through the room. Then Richard Hale stood. "Miss Morales," he said smoothly, "don't you think it's misleading to clean offices while secretly practicing law?" Lena met his gaze. "I never misrepresented myself. I cleaned because that was my job. I practiced law because that was my calling. The only deception here is believing one invalidates the other." Silence followed. The board recessed. Hours passed. Ethan waited, heart pounding. When Lena finally emerged, her expression unreadable, he stood instantly. "Well?" he asked. She exhaled slowly, then smiled. "They reinstated everything," she said, "unanimously." Ethan laughed, relief flooding his chest. "You did it?" "No," she said quietly. "We did, and now they're afraid." She was right. The ruling made headlines, but this time the tone had shifted. Former cleaning lady defeats bar review, exposes systemic bias. Public support poured in. Clients returned. New ones followed, but power struck again, harder. One evening their office was vandalized, files destroyed, equipment smashed, a message spray-painted across the wall, "Know your place." Ethan was furious. Lena was calm. "They're desperate," she said. "That's when people make mistakes." She was already planning their next move. Lena took on a massive class action case, one involving corporate exploitation that spanned multiple states. It was dangerous, high profile, exactly the kind of case meant to crush small firms. Ethan hesitated. "This could destroy us." Lena looked at him. "Or it could change everything." They worked. Day and night. The case gained traction. Evidence surfaced. Whistleblowers came forward, and then came the offer. A settlement so large it would make them wealthy beyond imagination, if they agreed to silence. Ethan stared at the numbers. This would secure everything. Lena closed the folder. "No," she said. He looked up. "No. They're trying to buy silence," she said. "Justice isn't for sale." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we go to trial." When the verdict came months later, it shook the industry. They won. The corporation fell. Executives resigned. Laws changed. Standing on the courthouse steps, cameras flashing, Lena spoke calmly. "I was once invisible," she said. "Today I stand here not because someone rescued me, but because I refused to disappear." Ethan watched her, pride swelling. She had turned the tables, not just on one arrogant lawyer, but on an entire system. And in doing so, she had transformed him too. Years later, the city looked different from the 32nd floor. Not because the skyline had changed, but because Ethan Blackwood no longer measured power by height. From the corner office of Morales and Blackwood, sunlight streamed across shelves, lined not with trophies, but with framed thank you letters. Workers who had regained their jobs, families who had found justice, lives rebuilt piece by piece. This office wasn't a monument to ego. It was a testament to purpose. Lena stood by the window, reviewing a case file, calm as ever. "You're doing it again," Ethan said with a smile. She glanced over. "Doing what?" "Carrying the entire world on your shoulders." She closed the file. "Someone has to..." He walked closer. Not alone anymore. The firm had grown, but carefully. They refused to become what they once fought against. Every hire reflected their values. No hierarchy built on arrogance. No voices ignored. No assumptions made based on appearances. And the W. Orld had noticed. Lena Morales was now a name taught in law schools. Not as a novelty, but as a lesson. Never underestimate. One afternoon, a young woman arrived for an interview. Nervous, intelligent, wearing a borrowed suit. She glanced around the office and whispered, "Is it true you used to clean floors?" Lena smiled gently. "Yes." The woman swallowed. "That gives me hope." Lena nodded. "Good. That means we're doing something right." After the interview, Ethan found Lena in the break room. "You changed the rules," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I played by them. I just refused to accept who they were written for." Silence lingered. Comfortable now, familiar. "Do you ever think about that night?" Ethan asked. "The one where I snapped at you for bumping into my desk?" Lena laughed softly. "You were unbearable." "I was," he admitted. "I thought power meant control. I thought kindness was weakness, and now I know power is knowing when to listen." Their relationship had evolved slowly, deliberately. Respect had come first, trust followed. Love arrived quietly, without drama, without declarations, just presence. They didn't rush it. They didn't need to. One evening after a long trial, they sat together in the empty office, city lights glowing below. "I almost walked away," Ethan said. "Before all this, I almost chose comfort over courage." Lena looked at him. "And you didn't?" "No," he said, "because you showed me something better." She reached for his hand. "You didn't save me," she said firmly. "You stood with me. There's a difference." He squeezed her fingers. "Best decision I ever made." News arrived one morning that made Ethan pause. Richard Hale had been disbarred. Corporate misconduct, ethical violations, everything he once protected had consumed him. Ethan told Lena quietly. She didn't celebrate. She simply nodded. "Power without integrity collapses." She said, "It always does." Months later, Lena was invited to speak at a national legal conference. The stage was massive, the audience packed. She stood confidently at the podium. "I was once told to know my place," she said calmly, "so I built a better one." The applause was thunderous. From the audience, Ethan watched, not as the man in control, but as the man who had learned humility. Later that night, as they walked home, Lena stopped. "You know," she said, If you hadn't been arrogant that night, Ethan winced. I know. We might never have spoken, she finished with a smile. He laughed. So my worst trait led to my best outcome? Growth often begins with discomfort, she replied. They reached their building, the city quiet around them. Ethan paused. Lena, he said softly. She turned. I spent years believing I deserved everything I had, he continued. But the truth is, I didn't deserve you. I earned you, by unlearning who I was. She studied him for a moment, then she smiled. That's the only kind of earning that matters. They stood together, not above the city, not beneath it, but part of it. The arrogant lawyer had met his match, not because she defeated him, but because she taught him how to become better. And in turning the tables, Lena Morales didn't just reclaim her place in the world. She redefined it.